very much, Rabbi Novaseller. I'm very, very happy you could make it here today. So everybody here knows a little bits and pieces about what's going on, but I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on today and what happened leading up to this event, because that's why you're here. So, but first I'm going to put you at ease by sharing a quote by former United States President Woodrow Wilson. He said, "How long does it take you to prepare a 10-minute speech?" 2 weeks, he answered. "How about a 1-hour speech?" 1 week. "What about a 2-hour speech?" "I'm ready now." I had a few weeks to prepare this, so I'm not going to be talking that long. I take you back to March of the year 2012. In that month, 2 things happened that had significant impact on today's events. The first and most important and meaningful event that took place on March 20th of that year was the passing away of Johnny DeHaan, Vim's father. The second event that took place almost within the same week of that month was the completion and release of my book, Jew Face, the book that tells the story of my parents' experience and survival during the Nazi occupation of Holland. Fast forward to March 20th of this year, when I received the following message in my Facebook account. "Dear Mr. Grom, might you be the closest living relative to Bram Rodriguez, born 15th October 1924 and died in 1943 in Auschwitz. Bram was a very close friend to my father. I immediately knew that the Bram Rodriguez he was referring to was the younger brother of my mother. The message I received came from Vim DeHaan. The following day, which happened to be on the Jewish festival of Purim, Vim sent me an email. In this email, he told me how the day before he had been the 7th anniversary of the death of his father, Johnny. Vim always knew about the violin and that it had belonged to his father, Bram, who he thought had no living relatives. A week before, in an old box belonging to his father, Vim found his father's diary. In that diary, there was an entry on August 25th, 1941, in which he states that summer holiday was over and he was going back to school, but the Nazis would forbid his friend Bram to go back since he was Jewish. In this entry, he first mentions Bram's full name, Bram Rodriguez. This information allowed Vim to do more research, and in turn he found my book. He then was able to confirm that Bram Rodriguez mentioned in my book was the same one that was his father's friend. He found my mother as the person who submitted Bram's information to the Yad Vashem database, and the picture he saw matched a picture in his father's diary of his father and Bram. Till this day, Johnny's guitar and Bram's violin had always been together. Vim ended his email to me that day with the following words. Back to the violin. I mentioned that I mounted my father's Gibson against the wall. After reading the diary, I felt that those 2 instruments belonged together. Therefore, I intended to mount the violin next to the guitar. But now I ran into you, together with your brothers and sister, the inheritor of the violin. Well, David, this is my story, the story of my father and his good friend Bram. And here we are today. So, before we go on to the next segment, I would like to hear a little bit more, hear a little bit more about Bram. But I will hopefully, if this works out, not be the one to tell you. Rather, I will let someone else do that instead. And I warn you, if this works, some of you will get emotional.
And he came always to me and
He was younger.
he was younger. Then Mommy died, he was 10 years, and he got sick, fever. And it was only because it was so low as he was, young as he was,
Traumatic.
the trauma. And anyway, he went to the, I remember to the war ceremony from the Potsdamer, how do you call it, the Potsdamer? The Potsdamer. They were the uniform ones, it's for kids, they do good work.
Okay.
And that was his high point for sitting there, see there. But he didn't have much.
Oh, like Boy Scouts.
Boy Scout.
Okay.
And he didn't have much. He was not really a sports fellow. He was more in music, played violin at a little band with the other boys, and had a good time. A very soft character for my mother.
Do you think, this is a tough question, but do you think his life would have been okay if he had lived?
Yes.
Do you think he would have been okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I always get the impression that I'm not so sure. Sounds like he was a little bit.
He would be okay. He was een whole different type than a lot van de dingen. Hij was more een klok, soft-hearted. And the clocks are all soft-hearted, they were all okay, mentally. And he was a healthy fellow, he was an healthy. But he had not the brains that I had, and especially my father, he had difficulties. But he loved music, was in a band, and he had all his friends. And they played music, like still a picture of him, he liked it. And, but other than that,
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. That was that was obviously, for those, I think almost everybody in this room knows, that was my mother, who passed away a little over 2 years ago. I'm sitting now because I want you to direct your attention to the screen. An event like this, if there is anything we can call an event like this, brings together people whose history is special in our lives. Today, the amount of descendants of people in this lovely crowd connected to the story is too special to ignore. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to wait with actually doing, while we were delayed here a little bit, we wanted to do introductions, but part of the ceremony here is actually I'm going to draw a connection to the history and to the people who are here today, because there are some remarkable people in this crowd to our family. But I'm going to start quickly just to a tribute to my mother and father. Narcis and Spora grown. In order to focus on the love and respect I have for them. I often tell people that I used to say, why can't I be that guy? The tall, dark, handsome, athletic, wealthy guy. Then as I got older, I realized I am that guy. I'm just a different that guy. I'm the guy that was blessed to have two parents that were loving and caring, and who I realized who could look up to and whose company I enjoyed. I realized that I am the lucky one. I start with them because I want to address the fact that they have children here. They have three sons here, a daughter here, two daughters-in-law, two grandsons, two granddaughters, one of which is here with her husband, and one great-grandson. Marcel and Bernice with their daughter Jennifer, son-in-law Ami, and their son Matan. Leo and, if you want to, please stand. If you feel like standing, you can. If you don't have to. Okay, so again, this is Marcel and Bernice.
Oh gosh.
Bernice.
Jennifer, Ami, and Matan. Who's my personal videographer today. Leo and Maureen. And Debbie with her 3 children, Becca, Jack, and Josh, have all come from America to be here today. Come on, Becca. You're not getting off that easy. And Jack, you can keep standing for a second, because I want to take this opportunity to thank Jack for his tremendous help in doing the artwork for our programs and for something special that we'll be seeing later in the ceremony. My own mayor was my father's older brother. I have fond memories of the time I spent with him and my Tante Ro when I was a young child. Own Mayor devoted much of his life to the Jewish community in Holland after the war, becoming a very prominent member of Dutch Jewish society. After the passing of his beloved wife Ro, and after retiring, he would settle down for the remainder of the years in Israel. He and my Tante Ro were survived by their 3 daughters, one of which, my cousin Betty, is here today with her husband Robert.
Yay.
My Tante Fee was one of 2 of my father's sisters. The youngest one, Elizabeth, was killed by the Nazis. As I remember her, a strong and brilliant woman, Tante Fee would move to Israel in the early 50s, where she was a head librarian at Haifa University. Jacques Baruch was a childhood friend of the family Kroon, the Groen family, before the war. His activities in the war would allow him to acquire papers allowing people to escape, and following the war as a Dutch senator, he would be instrumental in helping Dutch survivors receive financial reparations from the German government. He was a physician and prominent member in Dutch politics. His best friend was my David, until David would die in the mid-1970s in a car accident. Until his passing, my father would always see Jacques Bruch as one of his best friends as well. He and my Tante Fie's son Ellie, seen in the picture here with his father Jacques, is here today with his wife Anya. As well as Jacques' daughter Miriam, who is also here. Miriam. There were two people close to my mother who ended up being seen by her as the closest thing she would have to sisters. One was her cousin Tini. The relationship my mother had with Tini, or Katya as she would often call her, was a special one. Their mothers were sisters, they spent time together as friends in their youth, and they would enjoy each other's company many times in years to come. Tini and her husband Arnold would have 3 children, 2 of which today are here, Francine and Petra. With them. And Jacques and Suzanne. Before the war began in Holland, my mother was engaged to another man than the one she would marry. Hans de Jong was no secret to our family. My mother would speak often of the time she had with Hans and honored his memory with the affection with which she spoke of him. Another victim of the Nazis, Hans too would perish in a concentration camp. My mother was close to Hans's family as well, and had close friendship with his sister Hetty, a friendship that would last till my mother's passing. Just like her cousin Tini, my mother looked at Hetty as though she was like a sister to her. We are honored to have Hetty and her husband here today as well. Jan van den Berg was active in Freemasonry in Amsterdam. He also had a pharmacy. The pharmacies in Amsterdam were known for their work in the resistance because they had phones so they could call each other when the Nazis held raids and warn each other. Because Jan was a prominent figure in Dutch society, he was later kept by the Nazis in a camp called Sint Michiel-Gestel, where all Dutch prominents were kept hostage there to keep the Dutch citizens under their control. After World War II, Jan was known for his work to make medicines more accessible for all the people. He was counselor of the Union of All Pharmacies in the Netherlands. He was also my grandfather's best friend before the war, looking after his daughter, looking after his best friend's daughter, my mother, as much as he could when things went bad, helping her financially after the war. And when the war ended and my father was overseas with the Dutch Marines, and my mother took ill with pleurisy, they would look after my brother Marcel till my mother was well enough to go home. Just as Wim found me through the book, so did Jan's great-grandson Jelmer, who is here today with his family. And incidentally, Jelmer wrote a lot of what I just said. And happy birthday. So in all the names mentioned, there is one family I'm here to speak about. I think we know what family that is. When my mother arrived in their home in Leenlefeld in 1944, Albertus and Tante Geesje had a 7-year-old son, and Geesje was pregnant with her second child, who was to be their first of 2 daughters. I just want to let you know that I'm going to speak very briefly, because I could speak for hours about the Takeethas, but I'm going to be turning the microphone over shortly to my brother Marcel. Despite the danger it posed to their family, and very likely to the entire town, they would not only take my mother in, they would build a special room to feed her and treat her like a member of the family through the end of the war and beyond. My trips to Leenlefeld as a young boy were some of my greatest memories, mostly because of how wonderful it was to spend time with very possibly the 2 greatest people I've ever known. They would have 3 children, Gerrit, Anja, and Nina, who I still call DJ whenever I feel like it. Gerrit and Anja are no longer with us, but today in the crowd, the Takeethas, or as my siblings and I often refer to them, the family in Holland, are represented by Nina, her husband and children, as well as her daughter-in-law Lise, her children, grandchildren, and our youngest attendee today, her great-granddaughter. As I said, I would talk about Albertus relatively briefly because the affection I know I share with my entire family would make it very easy for me to speak about them for hours. However, I'm now going to turn the floor over to my brother Marcel, who will give a special tribute to Albertus and Tante Geesje, which will be followed by words from their daughter Nina and granddaughter Lisette.